When you talked to Republican officials before the 2020 election, and they were willing to tell you in that very scary piece that they were in conversations with the Trump campaign, that there was a plan afoot to have state legislatures replace the vote with what they wanted to be the result of the election for their state. You wrote that up before the election in a way that was illuminating and shocking, but it was ultimately borne out. Do you feel like in your reporting right now, particularly this idea about, moving to throw out thousands, if not millions of votes in the 2024 election, do you feel like you have similarly sort of uncovered something that might seem sort of far-fetched and unbelievable, but is actually a real plan?
I think it's very real. I'm personally, just as a citizen, very worried about it. I think you have people who are bound and determined not to allow Republicans to lose another national election, and not to allow Trump to lose another election. And they are giving themselves permission to do it. This is something I don't go into in this piece, but you've seen it all. They are characterizing the Democrats as tyrants, as thieves of an election, who actually stole the presidency, as communists, as people who hate America, and they couldn't discuss it with any more extremity than they're doing. And when you do that, you give yourself permission to take all kinds of steps in opposition. I mean, if you have an existential threat to the United States of America, which is what Republicans are saying about Biden, then what remedy would not be allowed to you?
Is that why you believe, Bart, that the feeling among Trump supporters, especially the hard edge of Trump supporters, is hardening? Both the militancy around the election issue, which has gotten steadily worse over the course of the year, but also the openness to violence as a potential solution here, that's gotten worse over the course of this year, too. Is it simply a result of the type of rhetoric that you're describing, or is there some other dynamic at work?
I think there's a strong ongoing message that is amplified thousands of times by the whole ecosystem on the right, that is a propaganda ecosystem, and it is telling people that someone stole the election from them, that the Democrats are destroying the country, that more and more and more so-called evidence proves these things. And yeah, I think there's this very large mass of Trump supporters who believe both that Biden is an illegitimate president who stole the office and that violence is justified. And frankly, I mean, if you were living in a country in which the election was literally stolen and an imposter was holding office, why wouldn't violence be justified? I mean, they're making an argument that leads only to one place,